Canadians are now getting the bill for the Prime Minister's $500 billion of inflationary deficits that first drove up inflation and now drive up interest rates. For a typical family that bought a typical home with a typical mortgage 5 years ago but are now up for renewal, they're paying $7,000 more per year. The Prime Minister said that the government was going to take on all this debt so that Canadians wouldn't have to, as if they don't have to pay back government debt. If that were the case, though, then who's going to pay the extra mortgage payments for these families?
Hear, hear, hear. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, through the pandemic, we made the decision to support Canadian families, to support workers, to support small businesses, to make sure Canadians could hold on and to make sure our economy could hold on through an unprecedented, historic pandemic. At the same time, we were there to support Canadians as the economy gets going again, and we're there to support them now with help with the GST rebate that's going to arrive in the coming weeks, and with direct support for dental care and for low-income renters. The question, Mr. Speaker, is why are Conservative politicians not choosing to support Canadians on dental and rental?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The Prime Minister caused this inflation crisis. Even Mark Carney, who will be the successor to the current Liberal leader, is saying that inflation is a homegrown problem. He's right. It's caused by the $500 billion of inflationary deficits that have been up the cost of the goods we buy and the interest that we pay. And today, rates went up another half point, meaning many families will be handing in their keys to the banks because they won't be able to afford those bills. Has the Prime Minister been briefed by his officials on how many Canadians will lose their homes because of the higher interest rates that his inflationary policies have caused?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, inflation is a worldwide problem right now, but it is a challenge faced by Canadian families that we will continue to support them through. That's why we're delivering supports for families right now in a targeted way, a doubling of the GST credit that will arrive in the coming weeks in their bank accounts, moving forward on support for dental care, moving forward on support for low-income renters, things that the Conservative Party is continuing not just to vote against but to block, and we will continue to do more. We will continue to be there for Canadians during the challenging times ahead, because that's what Canadians expect of their government.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
What they've come to expect of this government is that it raises the cost of living higher. The cost of government is driving up the cost of goods, and now the cost of interest. $200 billion of the $500 billion in deficits had nothing to do with COVID, according to the Parliamentary Budget Officer. And even that so-called COVID spending included the ArriveCan app, an app that could have been designed in a weekend for $250,000 but cost $54 million. The government claims that $1.2 million of that went to a company called Think On. That company says it didn't get that money. Who did?
Here. Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the appropriate ministers are looking into this and making sure that the mistake that was made by public servants in sharing information is followed up on. But at the same time, Mr. Speaker, it's important to remember that we did a lot of things in a very unprecedented way during an unprecedented pandemic, including delivering CERB checks within weeks of people having to stay home from jobs in ways that were unthinkable only a few months before. We were there to support small businesses with record support so that we could come roaring back as an economy immediately after. Yes, we stepped up in a very rapid way to support Canadians, and that's what Canadians know got us through this pandemic.
Interest rates are up again, and the Bank of Canada says more raises are coming. Now the bank says that inflation reflects Canadian domestic factors, not the global factors that this government keeps blaming. The government said interest rates will remain low, and then they went on a spending spree. They said it was irresponsible not to spend. They said there would be no inflation, and then they said inflation would just be temporary. And now inflation's out of control and Canadians are paying more.
That's right.
Will the Prime Minister finally admit that his spending has made life unaffordable for Canadians?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, during this unprecedented pandemic, all parties worked together to deliver the kinds of supports that Canadians needed, whether it was CERB, whether it was the CEBA account for small businesses, whether it was support for seniors, whether it's support for students. We continued to step up. This government led the way, but we had the support of members across the aisle for many of these initiatives. Now, the members across the aisle are saying we shouldn't have been there for Canadians. We shouldn't have spent that money supporting Canadians with the CERB and the CEBA. Well, I ask Canadians to think back over the past couple of years and imagine what it would have been like had we not been there to support them.